At my sister's wedding day, I saw a photo of myself posted at the entrance with the words, "Do not enter. Useless trash." My parents stood beside it, coldly saying, "Don't let anyone know you're our child." My sister smirked. "Don't come too close. Your poor smell will ruin the wedding photos." I quietly turned away. 30 minutes later, her wedding collapsed the moment I left. I had arrived early, as I always did. It wasn't because I wanted to see the decorations or witness her dream day unfold. No, I had a different reason for being there an hour before the event started. I just needed a moment to breathe, away from the noise and the expectations. A moment before I slipped back into the role I was so used to, being the background figure in my family's perfect picture. But then I saw it. The banner. It stretched across the grand stone archway at the entrance to the vineyard. My face was blown up clear as day, and beneath it, in thick red capital letters that seemed to scream at me, it said, "Trash not allowed." The words blurred, and, a split second, I wondered if they were real. I could hardly breathe. I froze in place, standing under that damn banner while the crowd around me buzzed with laughter and chatter, oblivious to the pain it caused me. The wedding planner, a woman I had never met, was adjusting the banner's corner as if it was just another decoration, no more important than the flowers or the seating chart. My mother stood there, chatting away with her. I watched as her eyes briefly flickered in my direction before she quickly averted them, trying to appear as if she hadn't seen me at all. And then there was Bailey. She appeared on the lawn, her veil floating behind her like a white cloud in the wind. I had to admit, she looked beautiful. For a moment, I almost felt the old pang of love for her, the sister I had tried so hard to protect and support. But as soon as she saw me, her face twisted into a sharp smirk, the kind only she could manage. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low enough for only me to hear. "Seriously, Paige, you smell like the night shift. Don't let the Harper family see you in that $20 dress." The insult hit harder than it should have, but I didn't flinch. I had learned long ago how to mask the sting. My mother moved quickly, her nails digging into my arm, urging me to leave. "Honey, just go," she whispered, her eyes scanning the area. "Afraid someone might see. Don't ruin today for everyone." I stood there for maybe 5 seconds of silence that seemed to stretch on for an eternity. My heart pounded in my chest, but I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just stood there, numb, my body refusing to obey the anger that boiled inside me. I pulled out my phone, snapped a quick photo of the banner, and sent it to Jessica. I texted her. Then I turned and walked away. My steps were steady, though I could feel the world around me shifting. My parents stayed where they were, pretending I wasn't leaving. Bailey, the perfect bride, floated across the lawn, her laughter barely audible. But all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat, echoing in my ears as I walked back to my car. I drove away while they still thought they'd won. 30 minutes later, every one of their 380 guests found themselves locked outside the gates. They stood there in the sun, watching as everything they had planned vanished in thin air. And when they realized what had happened, when they finally understood the consequence of their cruelty, it was too late. I remember the first time I realized I would never be good enough for them. It was a Saturday morning, and I was just 25 years old, standing on the stage at Haas School of Business, my MBA in hand. My parents were in the front row, beaming with pride. My father, in his impeccable suit, probably already thinking about telling his country club buddies about his eldest daughter, the chief financial officer of a successful restaurant chain. My mother was no less proud, her smile wide as she clutched her phone, preparing to post yet another achievement to the family's social media. I felt like I had made it. My entire life had been leading to that moment. I had worked tirelessly, sacrificing so much for my family. For years, I had been the dependable one, the responsible one, the one who always got straight A's and excelled in every aspect of my life. But when the world finally saw me as a success, when I was offered that high-paying job with a company on the rise, I realized something else. I wasn't the one they celebrated. Bailey was. She was 19 at the time, still figuring out her life, but to my parents, she was the one they doted on. The one who could do no wrong. I'd spent years helping her, paying her tuition, covering her car payments, picking her up from parties when she drank too much, and even footing the bill for our family vacations. And yet, it was always Bailey who got the attention. She was the one who posted photos of us together, celebrating how close we were. But when she had a rough patch, it was me who picked up the pieces. It was me who bailed her out. Still, I didn't mind. I loved my sister. I thought, maybe it was just how families worked. I helped because that's what big sisters did. But when Bailey posted a picture on Instagram one night, her and me, in our matching dresses on our mother's birthday, her smiling brightly and me in the background holding the wine glass, smiling but clearly less excited, I realized how small I had become in our relationship. It wasn't just the photo. It was the fact that it was never as about me. It was always about her. And that feeling didn't go away. Even when I bought her the diamonds for her wedding, even when I helped her plan her bridal shower, I felt it growing. Every time I gave a little more, every time I made another sacrifice, I saw her drift farther away. I was just a footnote in her life, there when it was convenient, but not really seen. When Tanner came into the picture, I thought maybe he was different. He wasn't like the others. He listened when I spoke. He wasn't flashy, and he seemed to appreciate me. I told myself, this could be it. The moment everything turned around, I was wrong. When I found out about the affair, when I saw the messages on his iPad, saw the betrayal for what it was, I knew everything I had built, everything I thought was secure, was a lie. And so was my marriage. My parents didn't help. They didn't ask what had happened. Didn't tell me it would be okay. They didn't even ask if I was okay. No, they said, you made your choices, Violet. They couldn't risk the fallout, not when my sister was about to marry a man with a family who could help them climb higher in their social circles. When the board accused me of mismanaging company funds, when they stripped me of my title and my reputation, I turned to my family, hoping for something, anything, but I received nothing. My mother's words echoed in my ears. Would just think it's better if you sit this one out for Bailey's sake. And that was it. The door closed. I was out, and Bailey was in. They stood by her while I stood alone. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, the walls too thin to drown out the sounds of the neighbors fighting, and I realized I had lost everything. The job, the marriage, and most devastatingly, my family. They weren't even pretending anymore. I was no longer the daughter they'd been proud of. I was just a failure in their eyes. It wasn't the betrayal that hurt the most. It was the silence after, the way they couldn't even be bothered to call, to ask if I was okay, to make sure I had food in my fridge. It was that final realization. I was invisible. I didn't belong anymore. I remember sitting at my kitchen table that night, the phone still in my hand. There were no more messages from my sister, no more texts from my parents. The silence was louder than any fight we'd ever had. And that was when I knew, for sure, I would never be good enough for them. I spent the next few months trying to hold it all together. The loss of everything, my career, my marriage, and my family, hit me harder than I wanted to admit. I kept telling myself I was fine, that I would bounce back. But every time I sent out a resume, it was the same story. No one wanted to hire someone who had a gap in their resume because of a scandal. No one cared about the circumstances. All they saw was the damage. It's strange, how quickly the world can turn its back on you when you fall from grace. I spent years building my career, working overtime, traveling for meetings, pushing my limits to prove myself. And when the rug was pulled out from under me, no one was there to help pick me up. I could hear my mom's voice in my head, telling me I had made my choices, that I had to live with them. I thought about calling her, asking for help. I thought about swallowing my pride and asking my dad to lend me some money, just enough to get by until I figured things out. But I knew what they would say. They would remind me that I had lost everything because of my own mistakes. They would never see the truth that they were the ones who had abandoned me first. I called them once just to hear their voices, but my father didn't even pick up. Mom answered, her tone distant, cold. "Violet, we can't help you. People are talking, and you know your father's up for partner this year. We can't afford any more scandals." She said it like it was nothing, as if I wasn't her daughter, as if the woman who had worked so hard to get where she was didn't matter at all. I put the phone down and stared out at my tiny studio apartment in East San Jose. The walls were thin, and I could hear the neighbors arguing every night. Their words drifted through the cracks, an endless reminder that life wasn't fair. I had gone from living in a beautiful condo with a view of the city to this. The sound of the traffic below, the constant hum of voices, the feeling of being trapped in a place that didn't belong to me, it was suffocating. But I couldn't stay there forever. I had to keep moving, keep trying. So I did what anyone would do when their options are running out. I took the night shift supervisor job at Walmart. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what I had worked so hard for, but it was a paycheck. It was something to keep me going, something to keep the world from swallowing me whole. The first night I showed up for work, the fluorescent lights above flickered as I walked in. I passed by aisles of cleaning supplies and canned food, the smell of bleach hanging in the air. The workers looked at me like they had seen a ghost, an overqualified ghost. I wasn't supposed to be there, not in my blazer and heels, not with my resume. But there I was, a failure at the lowest rung of a job that didn't require any of the things I had spent years learning. I spent my shifts stocking shelves, checking receipts, and trying to keep the sadness from showing on my face. The weight of everything was there, pressing on me like a heavy stone. It wasn't just the job. It was the fact that I had come so far, built so much, and yet it felt like none of it mattered anymore. I called my parents again. A few days into the job, I wasn't asking for money. This time, I just wanted to hear them say something that didn't sting. But when Mom picked up, her voice was soft, like she was speaking to a stranger. "Violet, you have to understand. People talk. Your father's up for partner this year. We can't have this situation tied to the family right now. I was no longer part of the family. I was just an embarrassment to them. And it hit me in that moment that they had already moved on. Bailey was still the golden child. The pictures of her in her designer clothes, the posts on social media showing off her perfect life, it was like they had all forgotten about me. She didn't even need to say it. I could feel it. She had replaced me, like I was a worn-out shoe that didn't fit anymore. The last time I saw her face was a photo on Instagram. Bailey had posted a throwback of the two of us at Disneyland when she was 10. It was the only thing she had ever posted that included me in it. She captioned it, "Miss my big sis." The comments were filled with heart emojis, people praising our relationship, our bond. But there was nothing behind it. It was a lie. I stared at that picture until the screen went dark, my finger hovering over the phone. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to call her out for everything she had done to me, for all the times she had used me and thrown me away when I wasn't useful anymore. But I didn't. I couldn't. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just lost my marriage, my career, and my reputation. I had lost my family, too. They had chosen Bailey. They had always chosen her. I put the phone down and closed my eyes, trying to ignore the weight of it all. It was too much, too painful, but it was also a wake-up call. I couldn't keep living like this, stuck in the past, stuck in the mistakes I had made. It was time to face what I had become and figure out how to fix it. The phone call came late one night, just after my shift at Walmart. I had just put in my hours, stocking shelves and trying to ignore the exhaustion that was creeping into my bones. The smell of the store, the bleach, the plastic, the faint hint of fast food wafting from the break room, had become all too familiar. I was in the parking lot, the engine of my old car still running as I checked my phone. It was Bailey. My sister, the one who hadn't spoken to me in almost a year, was calling. I almost didn't pick up. But I did. I knew something was coming. I didn't know what, but I could feel the tension in the air just by seeing her name on the screen. "Violet," she said, her voice cracking. "Please, I need you." Her voice sounded so small, so vulnerable, like the little sister I once knew. I could almost see her in my mind, standing on the other end of the line, tears streaking down her face. I could hear the desperation, and for a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, she had changed. "I'm getting married," she continued, "and I need your help. I'm stuck." I didn't say anything right away. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a wave of emotions wash over me: anger, confusion, a strange sense of hope. I had done so much for her in the past, and she had always turned her back on me. Why was she asking me for help now? "Bailey, you've had every opportunity to get your life together, and you never needed me until now. Why should I help you?" I said the words more sharply than I intended, but the bitterness spilled out before I could stop it. She was quiet for a moment, and then she spoke again, her voice breaking. "I'm short on money for the wedding. I've already signed the contract with the venue. I just need a little help. Please, Violet, you're the only one I can trust with this." I felt my stomach drop. She was asking for something big, something that could mean putting myself in a vulnerable position again. And after everything that had happened, I wasn't sure I could do it. But then I thought about the wedding, the place she was having it, the Silverado Crest, one of the most exclusive vineyards in Napa Valley. I knew how much it meant to her, how she had dreamed about it for years. "You want me to pay for it?" I said, my voice quiet now, almost a whisper. How much? $72,000, she said quickly, as if she had been rehearsing it. I can't lose this, Violet. I'm getting married to Landon. His family is paying for part of it, but the deposit isn't enough. I'll pay you back, I swear. After the wedding, I'll double it. You'll never regret it. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words press down on me. It was too much. I couldn't afford that. But then again, I had never been able to afford the space I took up in her life. I had always been the one giving, and she had always taken. What difference did it make if I gave one last time? What if I don't want to help? I asked, trying to hold on to the anger, trying to stay firm. What if I'm done? Bailey's sobs came through the line, raw and desperate. Please, Violet, I know I messed up. I've been a terrible sister. I'm sorry. But if you don't help me, I'm going to lose everything. The wedding will fall apart, and so will I. I could hear the desperation in her voice, and it broke something inside me. This wasn't the sister I had known, the one who had pushed me aside for so long. This was a woman who had been broken by her own choices, and I could see it now. I could see how much she had lost, how much I had lost, and for a moment I wasn't sure what to do. But I didn't say no. Not yet. I'll think about it, I said, even though I knew deep down that I had already made my decision. After I hung up, I sat in the car for a while, staring at the windshield. The world felt too big. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, if I was making a mistake that would break me again. But something inside me, something buried deep, made me pull out my phone and check my bank balance. And then I saw it. The inheritance from Nana Ruth had finally come through. $180,000. I could use it to help her. I could save the wedding. But something in me rebelled at the idea. Nana's money was supposed to be mine, a chance for me to start fresh, to rebuild. Yet here I was, considering giving it away to the same family who had discarded me. But then I thought about Bailey again and about how much I had sacrificed for her in the past. And I thought about the money sitting in my account, just sitting there. It wasn't mine to keep. It had never been mine to keep. The next morning, I called the vineyard. I told them I wanted to pay the full deposit up front, no installments. I was taking control, taking the power back for the first time in a long time. I signed the contract, made the transfer, and felt the weight of the decision settle over me. I wasn't sure what I was doing, but I was doing it for me, not for them, not for anyone else. And then I sent Bailey the message. It's done. The date is locked. Congratulations. She replied with a single red heart emoji, and that was it. No thank you, no excitement, just silence. For the first time, I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was empty. I had done what I could. I had taken the step. The rest of the story was up to her. The weeks dragged by in silence. I couldn't tell you how many times I checked my phone, hoping to see a text or a call from Bailey. But there was nothing. No thank you, no excitement, not even a single word of gratitude. It was as though I had done something for her, and she had simply discarded it, like everything else I had ever given her. It felt hollow. Every time I sent a message to the wedding planner, Madison, it was the same response. Bailey says everything is under control. I knew better than to ask if I could help with anything. I had already tried, more times than I cared to admit, and every attempt was met with polite deflection. One afternoon, after several weeks of radio silence, I was scrolling through my phone when I came across a story my mother had posted on Instagram. It was a photo of her and Bailey at the Vera Wang bridal salon. They were holding glasses of champagne, the soft pink of my mother's dress matching the delicate lace of Bailey's wedding gown. The caption read, "Celebrating the most beautiful bride." I zoomed in on the photo, my stomach twisting as I searched for any trace of me. There was nothing. No sign of my face, no mention of me. My heart sank, but I refused to feel surprised. This was the world they had built around themselves, and I was no longer a part of it. I had known this moment was coming, but somehow, seeing it in front of me made it feel real. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. I could see my mother beaming beside Bailey, the way she always did when everything was perfect. But I wasn't perfect. I never had been. And now, I wasn't even invited to be a part of their perfect moment. I closed my phone with a sharp breath and stood up from the couch. I couldn't let this ruin me. I wouldn't let it. They had made their choice, and I had to live with it. But I couldn't just sit in this apartment forever, waiting for something that would never come. I grabbed my keys and left without thinking. The streets blurred around me as I drove through the city, past the places I used to know. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I couldn't stay in that apartment any longer, couldn't stay in the silence that was swallowing me whole. I ended up at the parking lot of the Vineyard, the place where Bailey's wedding was supposed to be. It was empty now, quiet and still. No guests, no laughter, just a few cars parked by the gate. I sat in my car for a long time, watching the vines in the distance, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun on my face. I had paid for this. I had secured the wedding date, the venue, and yet it felt like everything was slipping away from me. As I sat there, my phone buzzed, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a text from Jessica. She had been quiet too, as if waiting for me to reach out. She had always been the one person who understood the weight I carried. "How are you holding up?" I read the message and felt a lump form in my throat. I thought about her, about how she had always been there for me, even when I felt like I didn't deserve it. I hadn't been the best friend to her lately, too lost in my own mess to offer anything real. I don't know, I texted back. "I'm still waiting for something, but it feels like I'm never going to get it. I don't know why I thought this would be different." A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. "It's not too late. You can still take control. Don't wait for anyone else to fix it." I stared at the message, and for the first time in a long time, something shifted inside me. It was true. I didn't have to wait for them. I didn't have to wait for Bailey to call or for my parents to change their minds. I had already taken the first step. I had already signed the contract. I didn't need their approval anymore. I could do this on my own, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. I wiped away the tear that had escaped and started my car. As I drove away from the Vineyard, I made a decision. I was done waiting. I was done being the one who always had to fix things. It was time to step away, to let them face the consequences of their choices. The wedding was going to happen without me, and that was fine. But I was going to start living for me, not for them. I wasn't going to be a part of their perfect world anymore. I was going to find my own, and it was going to be better than anything they could ever offer me. The road ahead felt different, more open than it had in years. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The day of the wedding arrived, and I felt nothing. No excitement. No relief. just a dull ache, a gnawing emptiness that seemed to have settled deep in my chest. I had spent so much time and energy trying to make this moment right for my family, for Bailey. But now, as the day approached, I realized that I was no longer invested in it. Not in the way I once thought I would be. I couldn't help but think about the moment I had stood outside that vineyard, watching my family parade their perfect little lives, the smile on my sister's face as she floated across the lawn in her Varawang gown. The image was seared into my memory. I had been there, right in front of them, yet I had never felt more invisible. I tried to ignore the thoughts that kept creeping back, pushing them away as I drove toward the vineyard that morning. The sun was shining and the air was warm, but all I could think about was the banner, the one that had called me trash. It felt like it had been hanging in front of me for years. But now, I was done. I had made my decision. I had already done my part. Now, I had to let go. I arrived early, the way I always did. The sound of the gravel crunching under my tires felt like a warning. It had been exactly 30 minutes since I had left the parking lot last time, when my family thought they had won. But today, I had come back for a reason. This time, I wasn't going to leave quietly. I parked my car far down the service road, just out of sight of the entrance. From where I sat, I could see the venue in the distance, the stone archway, the rows of vines that stretched out toward the hills. It was the kind of place that seemed perfect, a fairy tale setting for the day that was supposed to be my sister's crowning moment. But there was no magic in it for me. Not anymore. I looked at my phone, hoping for some kind of sign, but there was nothing. No calls. No messages. I hadn't heard from Bailey since I sent her that text. It's done. The date is locked. Congratulations. And after that, nothing. I had known I wouldn't hear from her, but it still stung. The silence between us had grown so thick that it was almost suffocating. As I sat there, waiting, I found myself staring at the vineyard's entrance, wondering what the day would bring. Would Bailey even notice if I showed up? Would my parents even care that I was there, standing just outside the gates, watching everything unravel? The thought made my stomach twist. I checked the time. The guests were starting to arrive, just like the wedding planner had said. There was still time, but I knew something had to be done. I took a deep breath, reached into my bag, and pulled out my phone. There was a message from Jessica. She had been quiet for days, and I had half forgotten that she had even been in the loop about all of this. Her message was simple. Are you still going through with it? Sare, I stared at the message for a long time, wondering what it was I had really set in motion. The contract I had signed, the money I had spent, it had all been to keep the promise I had made to my sister. But it wasn't for her. It was for me. It was to prove something to myself, to show that I wasn't the same person I had been when I walked into that vineyard a year ago, when I was still trying to keep everyone else happy. I'm done waiting, I replied. Shh, I'm doing this for me. Not for them, not anymore. I hit send and set the phone down on the passenger seat. I watched as cars drove past, the guests entering the vineyard for the event they didn't know would be destroyed. The countdown had begun. Minutes later, I stood outside my car, looking up at the vineyard one last time. The gates were wide open now, and I could hear the faint hum of voices in the distance, the rustling of dresses and laughter as the ceremony approached. It all felt so distant, like I wasn't even part of it anymore. But I was. I had made sure of that. I had locked everything in place, and now there was no turning back. I didn't know exactly when it happened, but at some point, the decision became clear. I wasn't just part of the family, I had chosen to step out of it, to reclaim my power. No more trying to please them, no more sacrificing myself for a family who never appreciated me. It was time for me to walk away. And if that meant watching everything they had worked for fall apart, then so be it. The vineyard wasn't the fairy tale they thought it was. Not for me. I walked toward the gates, ready to finish what I had started. The path was clear ahead, and with each step, I felt a little lighter. The weight of years of expectation, of rejection, of sacrifice, it was all slipping away. As I neared the entrance, I felt the pull of the moment. This was it. This was the moment everything changed. And just as I reached the gates, my phone buzzed again. It was from Jessica. It's done. The gates are closing. It's over. I smiled, a tight, satisfying smile. It wasn't the victory I had imagined, but it was the one I had earned. The wedding, their perfect day, had collapsed the moment I left, and I was finally free. I drove away from the vineyard, my heart pounding in my chest. The adrenaline was still coursing through me, mixing with the exhaustion that had settled into my bones. I hadn't expected to feel this way, so calm, yet so empty. I had done it. I had stood up for myself, made the decision to walk away, and now everything was unraveling in real time. My phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. It was a message from my mother. "Paige, what did you do? Open the gates. Right now, 380 guests are standing in the sun." This isn't funny. The message hit me like a slap. She was frantic, the tone of the words unmistakable. But I didn't feel guilty. I had expected this. They would always look to me to fix things, to smooth over the mess they had made. But I wasn't going to be the one to do it anymore. I was done. I didn't reply. The next few minutes felt like an eternity as I drove further from the vineyard. The messages from my family started to flood in, one after the other. My father's voice, a frantic voice note, came through. Fix this now, Paige. This isn't a joke. Do something. Say." I felt the weight of his anger, but it didn't move me. All these years of giving, of sacrificing my happiness for theirs, and what had it gotten me? This. The same treatment I had always received: rejection, dismissal. They saw me as nothing more than a tool, something to use when it suited them. And now they were angry because I had finally stood up for myself. Another buzz. It was Bailey's name this time. I almost didn't open it, but I did. "You ruined my life. You're insane." The message was short, but the venom in it was clear. She had every right to be furious. I had ruined her perfect day. But in her eyes, I had always been the villain. The one who never did enough. The one who was always there to fix everything for everyone else, but who was never given the same treatment in return. I had ruined her day, but I had also done what I needed to do. For me. I blocked her number, blocked my parents, blocked anyone else who came through in the flood of messages and calls. The silence that followed was deafening. I pulled over at a rest stop, the kind of place I used to avoid. But today it felt fitting. I looked out at the highway, the cars speeding by, all of them with their own lives, their own struggles. I was no longer part of that world, not in the way I had been. I stared at the highway ahead. It stretched out before me, endless, like the future I could now embrace. I wasn't bound by the chains I had forged for myself anymore. I had let go. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the need to look back. The road ahead was open. There was nothing holding me back anymore. I didn't know where I was going, but it didn't matter. For the first time, I felt like I was moving forward, like I was the one in control. My phone buzzed again. I checked it out of habit, but it wasn't a message from my family. It was from Jessica. "It's done. They're freaking out, but it's over. You did it." I smiled, a small, satisfied smile. It wasn't a win, but it was a release. The weight that had been on my chest for so long had finally lifted. I drove. And as I did, I realized something. I hadn't just done this for myself. I had done it for everyone who had ever been ignored, overlooked, or taken for granted. For everyone who had been told they weren't good enough. I had chosen to be the person who walked away. And now, I was free. The vineyard was behind me now. My family was behind me now. And for the first time in a long time, I was moving forward. 6 months later, I woke up to the soft drizzle of Seattle rain tapping against my windows. The city was quieter than I had expected, the air filled with a mix of salt water and fresh espresso. I had arrived here with nothing but a suitcase and a few $100s, unsure of what I was looking for, but certain that I had to leave everything behind. The past, my parents, Bailey, the vineyard, felt like a distant memory, one that hadn't quite faded, but was no longer sharp enough to hurt. The apartment I had rented was small but comfortable, perched on the 12th floor of a building in Belltown, overlooking the bay. On clear days, I could see the ferries cutting through the water, heading to Bainbridge Island. On gray days, the city looked like a painting, all mist and steel, quiet and full of possibilities. I had found a job at Amazon, not in the department I had once imagined for myself, but in operations management. Something practical, something that paid well enough to keep the bills in check. I had started at the bottom again, but this time I wasn't bitter. This time I felt steady. It was the first real peace I had felt in years. I ran into Cheyenne at a coffee shop a few weeks later. She had flown up for the weekend, and we spent hours talking over cups of dark roast, catching up on everything and nothing. She looked different, more settled somehow, less like the woman who had been holding me together all those years. We toasted to my new life, to the fact that I had done it, that I had finally walked away from the past. That vineyard? That family? Cheyenne had said, taking a long sip from her cup. "You've really cut the tie." "I had to," I replied, staring out at the misty view. "I spent too long trying to make something work that wasn't ever meant to be mine. It's over now. I'm done looking back." Cheyenne smiled at me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I smiled back. "You know, you've always been strong," she added. "But now, you're starting to really live for yourself." I nodded, my chest swelling with something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't pride, exactly, but something close. Maybe contentment. Maybe just the peace that came with knowing I had done the right thing. The silence between us stretched comfortably. I hadn't realized until then how much I had needed her presence, how much I had needed someone to remind me that it was okay to move on, that I wasn't failing by letting go. Later that week, I received a text from my mother. It was the first one in months since that last frantic attempt to get me to fix everything. The message was short, a cry for help in disguise. "Paige, we have nothing left. The house is gone, your father's blood pressure is through the roof. Bailey's still struggling to find a job. Please, we're your family. Come back." I read it twice, feeling a strange mixture of emotions wash over me. Part of me wanted to feel something for them, regret, maybe, or sorrow. But there was nothing. There was only the hollow, distant feeling of a woman who had moved on, who had left the weight of the past behind. I deleted the message without replying. I knew what they wanted. They wanted me to return, to play the role I had always played. But I had walked away, and there was no going back. Not for them, not for Bailey. I had finally understood that I was not the one who needed to be fixed. The next day, I met with the recruiter from Amazon who had been working with me since I arrived in Seattle. He sat across from me in his office, his expression serious but not unkind. We discussed my progress, the goals for the next quarter. Then he slid a piece of paper across the table. "Congratulations," he said. "You've been promoted. We'd like you to take on a team lead position in operations." I stared at the paper for a moment, absorbing the words. A team lead. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the CFO position I once had, but it was mine. It was real, and it was earned. I smiled, a genuine smile. The kind I hadn't allowed myself in years. "Thank you," I said quietly, knowing that I had truly made it on my own. As I left his office, the weight of my old life, the one with the vineyard, the family, the endless sacrifices, seemed to lift off my shoulders for good. It was behind me, in a place I could never return to. And for the first time, I felt okay with that. I sat on the bus ride home that afternoon, looking out the window at the gray sky. I was free, not just from my family, but from the fear that had held me captive for so long. I wasn't waiting for an apology. I wasn't hoping for anything to change. And in that moment, I realized how far I had come. No more waiting. No more guilt. No more feeling like I had to prove anything to anyone. I was done. I had saved myself. And I had done it all on my own. I didn't need them anymore. I had everything I needed right here, and I was finally at peace